Do you replay conversations in your head long after they're over? Not just once, but over and over, analyzing what you said, what they meant, what you should have said instead. Do you reread text messages before sending them, then reread them again after they're sent? Do you study tone shifts, pauses, facial expressions, picking up on things other people don't even notice? And before making a decision, do you imagine every possible outcome, the best case, worst case, and 5 versions in between? If that sounds like you, pause for a second and hear this clearly. You are not broken, you are not dramatic, and you are absolutely not weak. You may simply have a mind that processes the world more deeply than most. Overthinking has a terrible reputation. Society praises quick decisions, emotional detachment, and not caring too much. People tell you to just relax, go with the flow, or stop being so sensitive. But what if that advice completely misses the point? What if your overthinking isn't a flaw to eliminate, but a signal of something rare? What if your mind isn't malfunctioning? It's operating at a higher level of awareness. The truth is, chronic overthinkers often carry powerful psychological traits that are misunderstood. Traits like heightened emotional intelligence, advanced pattern recognition, and deep self-awareness. Yes, an undisciplined mind can create anxiety. But a trained, self-aware mind, that's strategy, that's intuition, that's depth. In this video, we're breaking down 5 rare personality traits commonly found in people who overthink everything. And by the end, you won't see your mind as a burden. You'll see it for what it really is, a hidden strength waiting to be mastered. Let's get into it. Overthinkers are often operating with elevated emotional intelligence. Psychologist Daniel Goleman brought emotional intelligence into mainstream psychology, defining it as the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, both your own and other people's. And if you overthink, chances are you're constantly reading the emotional room. You don't just hear words, you register tone shifts. You notice hesitation. You catch the micro-expressions most people miss. When someone says, "I'm fine," you instinctively know whether that's true or a mask. Your mind analyzes because it's processing layers of emotional data in real time. That's why social interactions can feel intense. Your brain isn't skimming the surface, it's diving deep. The downside? You absorb energy. You replay moments. You carry emotions that aren't even yours. But the upside is powerful. You understand people on a level most never will. You respond instead of react. You consider impact before speaking. That's not fragility. That's awareness. And when guided properly, that emotional depth becomes one of your greatest strengths. In personality psychology, one of the core dimensions of the Big Five model is conscientiousness, the tendency to be organized, responsible, disciplined, and detail-oriented. Researchers like Paul Costa and Robert McCrae identified it as a defining trait of people who take obligations seriously and think before they act. If you're an overthinker, this likely hits home. You don't replay decisions because you're insecure. You replay them because you care. You care about consequences. You care about impact. You care about getting it right. You double-check messages before sending them, not out of fear, but out of intention. You mentally rehearse important conversations. Not because you're weak, but because you want clarity. You anticipate possible outcomes because preparation feels safer than regret. That's not anxiety at its core. That's responsibility amplified. You don't want to hurt someone accidentally. You don't want to make careless mistakes. You don't want to look back and think, I should have thought that through. So you think, deeply, strategically, thoroughly. Now the shadow side. Perfection paralysis, waiting too long, over-refining instead of executing. But the strength, precision, reliability, follow-through. When you learn to balance thought with action, your conscientious nature becomes a superpower. You become the person people trust, the one who plans carefully, the one who delivers consistently. And once you stop letting perfection control you and start letting preparation empower you, you become unstoppable. Here's something most people never consider. Overthinking is often hyperactive pattern recognition. Your brain isn't just wandering, it's scanning, constantly asking, wow, what does this really mean? Have I seen this behavior before? Where is this likely heading? That's not random anxiety, that's a mind wired to detect patterns. In psychology, people who score high in cognitive reflection tend to question surface-level explanations. They don't accept things at face value. They look for structure underneath the structure. And that's exactly what overthinkers do. Think about innovators like Elon Musk. He's known for first principles thinking, breaking complex problems down to their core components, and rebuilding them from scratch. Overthinkers often apply that same process, not just to engineering problems, but to people. You notice inconsistencies in someone's story. You detect subtle changes in tone over time. You connect dots between past behavior and present choices. While others focus on what's being said, you focus on patterns across time. Now, yes, sometimes this ability turns against you. You might overanalyze neutral situations. You might assume meaning where there is none. But other times, you predict outcomes with almost uncomfortable accuracy. You sense when a relationship is shifting before anyone admits it. You recognize red flags early. You anticipate consequences before they unfold. That's not paranoia, that's advanced pattern recognition. Your mind isn't chaotic, it's running simulations. And once you learn to separate intuition from fear, that scanning ability becomes strategic intelligence. You stop overthinking and start out thinking. Overthinkers spend a lot of time in their own minds. Constant reflection, constant analysis, constant inner dialogue. Yes, it can feel exhausting, but it also builds something incredibly powerful: self-awareness. Psychiatrist Carl Jung believed self-examination was essential for growth. He famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Overthinkers naturally do this work. You don't just react, and you investigate your reactions. Why did that bother me? Why did I respond so strongly? Is this about them? Or something unresolved in me? Most people move on without questioning themselves. You don't. You pause. You dissect. You reflect. And when used correctly, that creates emotional maturity. You start recognizing patterns in your own behavior. You become aware of triggers. You learn your strengths and blind spots. The danger? Believing every thought is truth. The power? Realizing thoughts are information, not identity. When you learn to observe your mind instead of being controlled by it, you stop reacting automatically, and you start living intentionally. Overthinkers don't just want conversation, they want connection. Small talk feels draining. Surface-level interactions feel incomplete. You can participate, but it doesn't satisfy you. Because what you really crave is depth. You want meaning, alignment, authenticity. This trait is often connected to what psychologist Elaine Aron describes as the highly sensitive person. Her research suggests that some individuals process experiences more deeply, neurologically, and emotionally. If that's you, you don't just go through life, you interpret it. You analyze the tone behind the compliment. You notice the silence after the disagreement. You feel the shift in energy when something is off. You search for significance in words, actions, even in what isn't said. That's why betrayal doesn't just sting, it shakes you. Rejection doesn't just disappoint, it lingers. And genuine kindness, it moves you more than most people understand. Your nervous system isn't fragile, it's responsive, it's tuned in. The world often rewards detachment. It praises being chill and unaffected, but depth doesn't always look calm, it looks aware. Yes, in a surface-level culture, depth can feel isolating. You may feel misunderstood, too intense, too serious, too much. But here's the truth. Depth is rare, and rare things are valuable. When you stop apologizing for wanting meaning and start honoring it, you attract people and environments that match your level. You're not too deep. You're just not meant for shallow waters. Let's be honest for a minute. Overthinking isn't always a superpower. When it's unchecked, when it runs wild without structure, it can quietly start working against you. Uncontrolled overthinking leads to anxiety. It creates indecision. It disrupts your sleep. It drains you emotionally. You replay conversations at 2 a.m. You second-guess decisions that were already made. You imagine worst-case scenarios that haven't happened, and probably won't. And the more your mind searches for certainty, the more uncertainty it seems to find. That's the trap. A powerful mind without direction becomes overwhelming. When your thoughts have no boundaries, they don't just analyze, they spiral. They turn neutral events into threats. They turn small mistakes into identity statements. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from this?" your mind asks, "What does this say about me?" And that's when overthinking stops being reflective and starts being self-destructive. But here's the key shift. The goal isn't to stop thinking. You were never meant to have a shallow mind. The goal is to lead your thinking. There's a difference between having thoughts and being controlled by them. When you lead your thinking, you question catastrophic assumptions. You set time limits on rumination. You choose when to analyze and when to act. A disciplined mind doesn't spiral. It strategizes. Overthinking becomes dangerous only when it's unconscious. Once it becomes intentional, it becomes power. If you overthink everything, let's reframe what that actually means. You're not defective. You're detailed. You're not dramatic. You're perceptive. You're not weak. You're wired deeply. You notice what others overlook. You feel what others dismiss. You question what others blindly accept. That's not fragility. That's awareness. The world doesn't just need fast talkers and quick decision makers. It needs thinkers, strategists, empaths, pattern readers, self-aware leaders. It needs people who pause before reacting, people who consider consequences, people who care enough to think things through. Your depth is not the problem. Lack of direction is. Your task isn't to silence your mind or shrink your intensity to make other people comfortable. Your task is to discipline it, to decide when to analyze and when to act, when to reflect and when to release, when to trust logic and when to trust intuition. Because once your thinking starts working for you instead of against you, everything changes. You stop spiraling and start strategizing. You stop doubting and start discerning. You stop apologizing for your depth and start owning it. A trained mind is powerful. A self-aware mind is dangerous in the best way. So don't numb your mind, master it. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more psychology-backed insights on power, confidence, and human behavior. And comment below. Which of these traits do you see most in yourself? Let's build depth, not just noise.